the politician. But I mean, this is a very big challenge, and as I mentioned in my opening remarks, our governments, our political systems as a whole, not just governments, are going to have some hard conversations with our publics about the European social welfare model, about the investment to deal with climate change, about the investment to deal with aging populations, etc., etc., and the investment that's going to be required to secure ourselves. And so far, as I said, we're not really seeing that conversation happen, and it needs to be political systems as a whole. If it becomes a left-right thing or a political football, then, as we've heard, then the risk is we get less stable governments who aren't committed to it and who essentially stick their heads into the sand. And that's obviously a risk for us.
Mark, thank you very much. Senator.
Thank you. I will try to address the questions related to the political or the role of the question of political stability in Europe and how to sustain coalition of willings. First, I think that we have really to be aware of this gap between the experts and the large public. And this gap can be only bridged by very systematic strategic communication tools and methods. And I speak for this country, I know the best. We are still not there. And there is a good or encouraging example that if you are challenging in the parliament, and I speak for the Senate, which is more calm, even in times of campaigning as it is right now, in the Senate you can obtain a very large majority, even on the questions which are difficult, which are challenging, which are not simply to explain. And I think that if you spend time and with your colleagues, you have the time to exchange and to explain, they follow and they are ready to engage. And this is very encouraging. Nevertheless, the gap between, for instance, the high level of intel we have behind closed door and the public information about this is just astonishingly important. And we are suffering from this because the public behaves in a way as if nothing happened. And this is the opposite. And last but not least, concerning the elephant in the room a question, maybe we should strategize more among allies and engage parliaments very methodically to entertain flow in information and of engagements also on the level of parliaments. Give me just one example. Each time I am with my colleagues from allied countries on the Hill, engaging with members of the US Congress, I can assure you that this is sometimes extremely challenging exercise, but you come back with the very concrete results. And we have to plan each month, almost each week, regardless the midterm or other considerations, how to be there and how to explain, because the number of members of US Congress visiting other continents is simply limited. And so oftentimes it is only a small group of travelers. And I think that we have to make this effort to be there regularly every week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it is an intriguing idea to suggest that essentially Europeans have to market to the United States the importance of European security. But I think that's very useful to have said from your position in the Senate. Paul Johnson.
Yeah, a few things on intelligence reform as well. I think one of the lessons learned is that it's easier to predict capability than political intentions. We, of course, did an intelligence review conducted by Carl Bildt, which is no stranger to IISS.
Yeah.
That was presented in June. I think one of the main conclusions is to work much more with open source intelligence than we actually have been doing before in the Intel community, and the importance of fusion also between the political level and in Intel community as well. How to sustain the investment in the long run? Well, what we are doing right now is going back to defense investment levels that were apparent during the Cold War, because we have a threat that is equivalent to the Cold War. So in that way, it is natural, of course, that we walk this way, and we've done it before in history. Now, I realize that many European countries are somewhere between a rock and a hard place, because we have low growth and we have high levels of national debt as well. Engaging, like Mark Sedwell said, with your population, I think is absolutely crucial. I'm glad in Sweden we have all 8 parties stand behind us reaching NATO's capability goal, and also the 3.5 by 2035. So we have a strong domestic support for doing it, but it's easier because we're actually quite low in debt. I think Camille questions, of course, and that's depending on what kind of US posture review we're going to be seeing. I think that's a very important question. If we are, of course, going to be being the foot soldiers, so to speak, or if we're also going to be replacing some of the more advanced capabilities and assets that the Americans have, especially, of course, that goes into the element of nuclear deterrence as well. Now, as the capability targets are shaped, they are, of course, meaning that Europeans will take a larger toll when it comes to the conventional deterrence of the alliance as well. But I think it's a very good question on some of the more difficult things to replace the Americans on: strategic lift capabilities, precision strike capabilities, space-based intelligence, and so forth as well. And that's going to take a longer time than just focusing on enablement, which is our predominant focus right now. And that also leads into the question we've been having about mass and scale and volumes. We know what we need to do. We need also to focus on the massing. That is of course a conclusion from the war in Ukraine. And in order to assure mass, we need to break the cost curve especially on a few sectors in the defense industrial base. And then just going back then also to Bastien and also to Ben's question in regards to the competitiveness of the defense industrial base, there's a lot of things that need to be done. One is because defense industry is victim being the most regulated business on a global basis that cost money because our procurement circles are too long and too ineffective. The other one, of course, that affects it as well is that there's been a lack of long orders as well, ranging over time. So there is a predictability